Welcome back. The G20 Summit takes place in Johannesburg later this month, the first time South Africa hosts the world's major economies. But the lead-up has been marked by controversy. Former US President Donald Trump has announced that no American officials will attend, citing alleged human rights abuses, and locally, the Women for Change movement is planning a nationwide purple shutdown to protest gender-based violence on the eve of the summit. To unpack these developments and what they mean for South Africa in the region, we're joined by South African social commentator Donovan E. Williams. Donovan, good evening and thank you so much for joining us here on the Daily Roundup.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you for inviting me, and afternoon or evening to all the viewers.
Well, to begin with, Donovan, could you explain the significance of the G20 convening in Johannesburg this year? What are the priorities for Africa and for South Africa as a host, and of course, why it matters globally?
Well, first and foremost, as Africans, we know how we have been marginalized from the world. So therefore, the G20 taking place in our continent is significant in itself, and we mustn't lose sight of that. In as much as there may be controversies and so forth attached, it doesn't take away that Africa is beginning to ensure that its voice is being heard. More particularly, though, South Africa has always, on the international stage, and to its compliment in a real way, it has made certain it has not delinked the South African agenda from the overall development agenda of Africa, in particular Southern Africa. It has always raised matters in whichever form it can to make certain that the development of our continent, particularly poverty, addressing poverty and economic issues, are addressed. So in that regard, this has been no different in the G20. The priorities of the G20 have been increasing trade and cooperation, but as well as making certain that the indebtedness of countries in the South, in the developing world, in particular Africa, is addressed in a sustainable manner. This matter has been bedeviling Africa for over 3 decades now, and it is a matter that has to be sorted out. And there is a work stream to deal with that.
Yeah.
Also, more importantly, it is also starting to tackle or beginning to put on the table the matter of the overall inequality of the international system and how that leads into global inequality in that regard. So these are the priorities, and that's how it is happening. And therefore, it explains how important the G20 is. Just for the record, it's called G20, but there are only 19 countries, and the African Union and the European Union are part of it. So it is the leading economies, but it includes economies that are in the South, like Indonesia and ourselves and others. But it is the main economies from Europe, the United States, and Canada, and these are the largest economies in the world.
Well, as I mentioned in my introduction, Donovan, President Trump has declared that the United States, will not send any government official to the summit, citing alleged human rights abuses and land expropriation claims in South Africa. Now, in your view, what are the real motives behind, this decision? Is it purely about South Africa, or part of a broader US strategy?
It's a bit of both and then some. Firstly, maybe it is a boon. It is a bonus that President Trump has not come or sent somebody, because it would have overshadowed the summit, as we've seen with the Epstein files and the allegations contained in the emails just released via the Epstein estate by the major opposition party in the US. It would have made certain that the world's media would have only been raising those matters as opposed to the important issues that have been discussed at the summit. So firstly, I think that's an unintended bonus by him not coming or sending officials. But more than that, the United States has always, and this predates President Trump, has always looked at multilateral institutions, be it United Nations ones or voluntary ones as institutions that they only cooperate and attend if it's in their direct interest. If not, they tend to treat the institutions in an undermining way. For example, the United States did not attend, they did not send their president for the World Summit on Sustainable Development. They did not send their representative or president, rather, their president, when the World Conference Against Racism occurred. So this is not something new, except the difference is with President Trump, he is crass. President Trump is very crass. His personal matters seem to overshadow the needs of the country, and he intertwines them. And so therefore we shouldn't be too worried about it. This time shall pass. The United States has to cooperate in bodies like the G20. And more importantly, there's a troika. So South Africa, as the outgoing president, will be part with the United States, which will take over the presidency after this of the G20 after this, and will have to work with South Africa as well as the incoming president after the United States. So therefore, the United States won't be able to run away from working with South Africa. And lastly, he's calling it human rights abuses. He's determined that there's a genocide against Afrikaners in our country, which is far from the truth at all. I don't know why the Springboks were winning on Saturday against France if this was the case. And more than that, though, is that I think President Trump has a lot more matters to deal with, and his officials have a lot more fires to burn out. And maybe the G20 can't just take their time right now.
And then, of course, we have the Women for Change campaign as well that has mobilized a nationwide shutdown on November 21st to honor the 15 women allegedly, murdered daily in South Africa. From your perspective, how effective can such a Purple Movement protest be in influencing, the summit's agenda or compelling government action?
First and foremost, Nina, let me say this. I am fully aware that I speak on this matter as a man, and therefore a unwitting beneficiary of patriarchy and sexism. I recognize that. I'm aware of that. And I do believe that patriarchy and sexism and how it plays out both in the social and economic as well as political fields is a real challenge, not just for South Africa, but globally. The initiative taken up by the women of our country, I think is a noble initiative. It also shows the fiber and strength of South Africa's democracy. We have nothing to hide. Our people should be able to express themselves. They're not embarrassing us. They're taking up a matter which is a major matter in South Africa, but it is a matter that's global. It's a matter that is a challenge all over the world. We would hope that the 15 minutes of silence, the withdrawing of economic trade on consumers on Friday, that is tomorrow, will happen. As a man, I shall also be adhering to that and committing to it. The South African government, I'm sure, is welcoming it. Our women must have a voice. I hope it will impact on the agenda of the summit. But we must also be aware that for many of these summits, not just the G20, in very many ways, we have been disappointed by the West. Have been disappointed by the West, led by the US and Europe. They did it with the 2008 financial implosion. They did it in COVID, and they have never, ever really kept up to their promises. So I think what's incumbent upon us, women and men and all of us, is to make certain the agenda being put forward by South Africa, which is in the benefit of the South, in particular Africa, we fight for that agenda post the summit. We hold hold countries to it, particularly the West, which has benefited from colonialism and underdevelopment for time immemorial.
Well, considering both the boycott and the shutdown, Donovan, how do you assess the host country's ability, that is now South Africa's, to manage its global diplomatic positioning while also facing internal protests and significant international scrutiny?
South Africa is really good at hosting events. I think all of Africa, for that matter. We hosted Nelson Mandela, our founding president, his funeral under really a major political scrutiny. There were protests even and so forth. Our democracy is a strong democracy. It's a democracy that accepts that the people express themselves, but it will not result in any manner whatsoever that the capability is not there to host it. We can host our this summit in any part of the country. It's just being happened to be held in Gauteng, but it can happen anywhere. South Africa has got a track record, and a brilliant track record for that matter, of hosting international events, global events, more than most countries in the world. And this event will happen without a hitch. It will take place under wonderful atmosphere, and it will take place under a thriving democracy, a democracy that is not afraid to reveal itself.
Well, finally, Donovan, looking ahead, what are the possible, scenarios after the summit? Just talk to us about that as we conclude.
Well, one, we will be hoping that Bafana will do really well in the World Cup. No, just kidding. Just more particularly is that this is what I alluded to earlier. The developmental agenda that may come out of the summit on the reform and increasing of trade, the economic reform and the increasing of trade in favor of Africa depends on how we as African countries stand with each other and that agenda.
Yeah.
How Namibia, South Africa, Nigeria, and various other countries push forward to make certain that those agreements reached in the G20, the principles of it, are reaffirmed in other international bodies, be it from the IMF, the World Bank, the WTO, and etc. Those principles become quite important. That global agenda is required, especially in a post-COVID world where countries have receded into their own economies and their trade is majorly in their interest. The African agenda lost out a lot about that. And we are worried, I think must be fair, we are worried that very many presidents are not coming. Lots of their foreign ministers are only coming, but that is neither here nor there, because the process after the G20 is actually even more important. And this is where Namibia and other countries must stand with South Africa and South Africa stand with them and take it through the African Union to make certain this agenda goes where we want it to go.
Mr. Donovan Williams, it's been lovely having you with us. Thank you so much for your time and joining us here on the Daily Roundup with Nina.
Thank you, and thanks for laughing at my little jokes.
That was social